Alright, hello world. In this video I will be demonstrating Bloom, which is a new reverse reverb effect that I've developed both as a VST and audio unit plugin. So in this video I'm going to be showing the controls and using the effect on a couple different channels in this Ableton Live set to show what you can do with it and how it sounds. So with that, let's get started. First, I'm going to start with this guitar sample. It's a guitar with just a fuzz pedal on it as well, playing a couple chords. I'll start with the effect fully off, and as it continues to go through the loop a couple times, I'll increase the wet until it's fully only the reverse reverb that you're hearing. Okay, so that's the basic use case. It takes the incoming audio and it reverses the incoming audio and also adds some reverb to that reversed copy before mixing it back in with the dry signal. So to go through the controls, starting at the top, you have reverse time. And reverse time controls the maximum amount of time before you'll hear what just happened in reverse. So at higher values, it will take a little bit longer potentially before you hear the reverse copy. And at shorter values, you'll hear those reverses more quickly. So just to maybe show what that sounds like, I'll reduce reverse time a bit and just kind of quickly start and stop the audio a couple times to show how quickly the reverse response is. And I'll make this half dry, half wet so you can hear both. And now, if I move reverse time back up and do the same thing, there should be more time between when the sample starts playing and when you hear the reversed copy. Okay, so that's reverse time. I think dry wet is pretty self-explanatory. This is only the dry signal, this is only the wet signal, this is half of them each. Then there's a wet gain control, which controls basically just how loud the wet signal is. It can be fully 0 when it's all the way to the left, and it can be multiplied by 4 when it's all the way on the right. At the middle, by default, it's there's no gain applied, so it's times 1, and that means that these values are kind of exponentially growing from 1 to 4 at this point, and from 1 to 0 on this side. So just to hear how that sounds. Okay. All right, so then the last two controls are for the reverb. The first control, decay, controls the contour of the reverb response. So when decay is up towards the top, it basically just means a longer reverb. However, that can be really dampened down by this last control. So if decay is up but damp is also up, the response will be not very long. But if damp is all the way down and decay is up, it will be quite a bright and long reverb. So with these two controls, say for example, if you have decay down here, you'll still hear a reverb, but it's much more quick and subtle than if it's all the way up here. So there's quite a range, and I will just kind of demonstrate what that sounds like now on the guitar sample. Okay, so that's all the controls. I'm going to play with the effect on a couple other instruments to show what kind of other sounds it can come up with, and then just note a couple things, and that will be the video. All right, so obviously just kind of scratch the surface of kind of the different ways that you might, what sorts of channels you might put this effect on, but hopefully this demonstrates how it sounds, what it can do, and maybe just a last thing to note is that the reverse time is not quantized based on, the tempo of the song or anything like that, which means that essentially if you play a static loop over bloom, if you include bloom in the sort of signal chain while just playing a static loop, the reversing patterns will always kind of be a little different. It's not going to sound the same each loop, and it's not going to sound the same each time you print audio. So there's kind of an element of unpredictability and chaos in this plugin, which is really fun to play with, and I think it creates a sort of geometric world that you can interact with by just listening to the response. So I think that's really fun, and I just wanted to note that, as well as one other thing, which is that I love this style of reverb. It was inspired by a piece of hardware gear that I own that is the Alesis Midiverb Mark II, which was originally released in 1987 and is just such a sick piece of gear. This plugin in particular is modeled after presets 4.1 through 4.9, and those are called the Bloom reverbs. And essentially it's this same algorithm. I don't know the algorithm because I didn't write it, but as far as I can tell, it's a reverse copy, and then there's reverb on the reverse copy. And that unit is kind of legendary, at least it is for some of my musical heroes. For example, Kevin Shields, the guitarist from My Bloody Valentine, is known to have two Midiverb Mark IIs in his guitar rig. I don't know if they're in parallel or in series or what, but it's pretty cool that he has two. He's been quoted as saying that reverse reverbs are his secret weapon. And similarly, Trey Anastasio from Fish, who also plays the guitar in that band, has had a Bloom reverb effect on his main guitar chain since the 1980s. That's actually a Alesis microverb, but it's kind of similar algorithm and similar sound. So I decided to get one years ago because I just thought it was an interesting thing. And the one thing that was kind of tricky about having a Bloom reverb as a hardware unit is that you had really no control over the algorithm that it was using. There's just these 9 presets, and you can't change the reverse time, you can't change wet gain or really the contour of the reverb at all. It's just kind of the preset and you go with it. So my intention with developing this plugin was to sort of provide the same type of effect, but give the end user a bit more control over the way that it sounds, the amount of reverse time, and the type of reverb that you want. So that's the inspiration for where this came from, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to buy this plugin if you want. It costs $25 and it's really, really fun. It's available on my Gumroad page. Thanks for watching. Bye!